Hello and welcome to the Tide Knitting Podcast, the place where we discuss the latents going on in the world of football, play a couple of games and almost definitely go off on a tangent or two. I'm Connor Burke and I'm joined as always by my friend, my cousin, but most importantly my co-host Kieran Burke. Kieran, how are you getting on?
Good evening. I'm very good, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm very good, sir. A very good weekend last weekend.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I was floating on air just in a daze of enjoyment for the whole week since that beautiful result on Sunday.
I am back to take my victory. Not quite 6-0, but I am here to take my victory lap. I said Man City will go on a difficult run.
You did.
And I think 2 losses, minimum, quantifies a difficult run. They told me that I was wrong, Kieran. They told me I was a fool.
Who could have said such a thing? It couldn't have been me. Yeah, we'll give you your flowers. We'll give you your flowers. A good shout. It was looking to me like City were just impossible to beat, but they've shown some vulnerabilities. I think largely in part Rodri being missing.
Yeah, you could see the Rodri lack in that team. So in the midfield, there was nothing there. There was no creativity, no movement. They just looked completely flat.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain. Obviously, we had players missing ourselves as well, but I think Rodri is so key to that team. And there's been a bit of talk around. Obviously, Calvin Phillips would seemingly be the natural replacement at CDM
if his manager liked him.
Exactly. For whatever reason, Pep doesn't trust him, so they obviously had Kovacic, who should have been sent off, and I'm amazed at some of the comments I've seen this week that suggest he shouldn't have been sent off, which I find quite astonishing. I was actually watching the overlap this afternoon with Roy Keane, who was saying he's not so sure it should have been a second yellow. I don't know how he's come to that conclusion.
If Roy Keane's saying that, I don't understand that at all. Well, actually, no, I do understand that. Roy Keane's a man that could go straight through someone's calf and he'd be annoyed at a red card. So I can understand that from him. But it was a definite sending off. It was another in a long line of ridiculous decisions by English Premier League referees this season. It just seems to be every week there's some stupid decision that PGMOL have to apologise for or make comment for or stand trial for, and there's going to be no shortage of that because we have some of the worst referees in the world.
It would be interesting to see if we'd gone on to lose that game, whether we would have got an apology for that or not. But there you go.
Frame it next to the Brentford one. What a shame we didn't. Yeah, but that game, that sort of every making of a draw, it was we say how poor Man City were, but they pretty much did enough for a draw in that game. They did enough to dull us as much as we dulled them, but we got the rub of the green. We earned our own luck with that deflected goal off of Ake's big old face.
Yeah, it's very much two sides cancelling each other out, really, wasn't 100%. It? And then it was just that bit of injection of energy Martinelli brought us. I know it was fortunate the way the goal went in, but I think the impact Martinelli had on the game after coming on at half-time, I think...
The second game, from his first dribble, you could see the difference in energy he brought on that we just didn't have with Trossard and Jesus.
Yeah,
I did think Jesus was decent though.
I do. The only thing is, I think we noticed a few times whilst watching it, Jesus doesn't have those instincts of a winger to go in behind, and then even defensively. Saka and Martinelli, the energy that they both have going forward and back,
it's just
supporting the fullbacks is completely different. So I do think he filled in well. Trossard, obviously, similar sort of play, very good technically, but again, won't really go in behind and damage a team. I think if he gets a chance, like he's very clinical and he's got quality to punish teams, but he's not that sort of explosive winger that the likes of, in the big games when you're playing the likes of City, having the Martinellis and the Sakas to get in behind and really hurt the fullbacks is something we did miss. And then obviously Martinelli coming on at half time gave us that different dimension.
And the other thing, talking of victory laps a moment ago, the victory lap continues on Nketiah.
Yeah, he's not good enough, is he?
You you can get fooled by one or two decent performances, but he's a backup. He's a backup by nature, and he's a very good backup. Like, that's not a negative, but that's not an overly negative comment on him. That's just is where his standing is in that team. And when he has to play consecutive games, it shows it. I think he's a fantastic... We can throw him on for 1 or 2 games as a short run. We can bring him on as a sub in the second half and he can go at team. He's fantastic with that. But as a starting striker, especially in these kind of games, it really shows he's not there.
Do you think, Jesus included, we have the strike force to win the league at the moment? Do you think this current squad can win the league?
Can they win the league? Yes. Strike force, it does. I don't know if it's because Tony's available that it's in your head, but it does feel like if you can have a Tony through the middle, and then the things you can sort of do with Jesus, and you can play him on the wing, you can also play him through the middle. It gives an extra bit of freedom. It gives what Arteta loves, that choice of players. I feel like it does add something. I definitely think we have the team to win the league at the moment anyway. I think we have goals throughout this team, not necessarily in the forwards, which you'd sort of want to be the case, but at Arsenal, you're looking at wingers, midfielders, more so than you're looking at Nketiah and Jesus. Jesus, you're almost looking at 4 setup, which, do you necessarily want that from your striker? I'm not so sure, but it does add a different dimension to the team.
I'd definitely take Tony in a heartbeat, to be honest.
100%. 60 million feels like a steal. Yeah,
as much as I do rate Jesus, I just think in terms of, that back end of the season, obviously we experienced it last season, having a player, you just need to nick a goal. And obviously there was points in last season where we rode our luck a bit and we came up with a goal, the likes of your Bournemouths. But there was those games, the back end of that season, the West Ham game in particular.
We ran out of ideas.
You need a chance, and I do like Jesus, but he is just a bit erratic in front of goal. I mean, we saw it I think Spurs when we were 1-0 up and he had that good chance. I just think, obviously Tony's at Brentford at the minute, so there's an argument, can he step up to the plate? But I think he's definitely got the quality. But as you said, of course we can win the league with the current squad. It's just whether we will and whether you get an injury or two in the business end of the season. Yeah, that's when it really starts to count. I think we were saying as well with this game, it felt like a massive win, but we're at that point of the season where there's still so long to go.
It won't play out until it's that classic thing. The league can't be won at the start of the season, but it can certainly be lost, and it's very much plays into that. As long as we're still there, going into sort of March, April time, you've just got to be in that. Like, you look at City, they didn't go top until they won the league, basically. You just have to be thereabouts until that latter end of the season. And I feel like we definitely have the makings of another title run, and just got to hope that what happened last season brings you over the line. I feel like Spurs, this happens to quite often, where they'll have a good start to the season and it becomes a bit of a mirage and they'll level out. And I think we'll be looking back on our start of the season conversations with what success for Spurs is a pretty correct, in that I still think they should be, what we said last week, they should be looking at top 5, maybe top 4, and don't run away with it even though they're top of the league. But it'll be funny. It leads to good memes. So a win is a win.
Yeah, I think for Spurs, it's got, like, based on the quality of the other teams and their start. I know you've said they've had a good start in the past, which is true, but I don't think to this level where 8 games in, 20 points, I mean, it is a very good start. Yeah, I think to this extent where they're joint top of the league, I think, like, it's gotten to the point, you look at the likes of United, they're not winning the games, and it could be the case it is a purple patch, but I think top 4 has got to be the aim for Spurs. With, obviously, you've got Arsenal, Liverpool, City, who consistent quality squads. I think outside of that, Spurs are probably, well, it might be a bit harsh to say best of the rest at the moment, considering they are joint top, but I think they will, as you say, fall into that category where they're going to have to try and be best of the rest. And I think their start puts them in a good position to do that, although it is only 8 games in.
Yeah, when it levels out. So I was just having a look at the table from last season there, and last season after 8 games are on 17 points. That's only a couple of points down from now. So, and then you look where they ended up, and they took a very similar amount of time for them to lose a game last season. I do just feel like the same thing will happen, but with a bit more of a positive hue on the situation. I do think best of the rest may be where they end up levelling out at.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so that's a very brief chat on last weekend. The other thing from last weekend is FPL. Let's dip into it.
Yeah, I think we were and ahhing last week. I did propose I might use my wild card, and I did end up going for it. Ended up on 52 points, pretty respectable. The average was 44 for last week, so nothing groundbreaking, but I think definitely better than I would have done had I stuck with the original team. Gahey on the bench again with 9 points. He seems to be on the bench every week and scores points, and I still don't put him in. But
the second
maybe
you
I'll
play
learn.
him, it'll be two. You know that.
It'll be a red card, an own goal, and they'll lose 5-0. But so maybe for Palace fans, I should just keep him on my bench. But not a bad week. I did captain Son, and after Saturday's game, obviously he only got the 3 points, with obviously 6 points as the captain. I was a bit worried as I was one of the only ones. Say that again, sir?
You made a little gain in the end with Son.
A little gain, exactly. I was worried originally, but I was banging on that Haaland will blank and Gabriel and Saliba will show him levels, which they did. So it didn't work out as a disaster in the end. But yeah, back up to second in the mini league. So moving in the right direction.
Yeah, just looking at mini league now in front of us with myself, Kieran, a mutual friend of ours, and his dad are in the league, and there's a 4-point gap there between first and third, and then I'm 26 points away. 45 points last weekend, as you say, 44 on the average. So not a disaster, back in the average, but just need to get some more points on the board. Really, with the differentials are the big difference, and I'm looking at Rashford, Diaz, Evan Ferguson, Douglas Luiz. The more I sort of look at that team, the more I am leaning to wildcarding for next weekend.
I was just going to say, you did mention maybe after this international break you might debate the wild card. Is that you leaning towards the wild card?
Yeah, I'm already regretting bringing out Isak. He's in the team name, Lovey's actually, and he got binned off and then started getting points in. You obviously brought him in. He got you a double.
Beautiful. Do you know what? It genuinely came into my thinking bringing him in that you brought him out, and I thought it's the Connor curse.
Yeah.
It's the curse of anyone when you bring a player out. They seem to score, and obviously he got the brace. He got me 13 points. So big reason why I had a decent week was the boy Isak up top.
Yeah, I did a little double transfer myself, which ended up paying out. I brought in Maddison and Romero for Ben Mee and Eze, and they ended up both getting me points this weekend. So we'll definitely take that. But Isak is the big one there. I think it's going to be a big refresh, a big wild carding week next week, and we'll bounce back. But the thing is, I look at Rashford and I look at Diaz as team players we might bring out. And then next week, or next game week, I should say, they've got Everton and Sheffield United, respectively. So it's a difficult one.
Yeah. With the international break as well, there's always the risk that you make transfers early and then players get injured or whatnot. So yeah, it's a bit of a risky one to make changes at the minute, isn't it? But I guess if you've got your wild card played, then it doesn't matter too much.
Yeah, exactly. We'll hold out for the next week, see how that plays out. But obviously, as we say, an international break this weekend, Kieran. So we thought we'd have a little international break special of our predictions. Usually every Premier League game week, myself and Kieran will do our predictions for a selection of Premier League games. We did miss a game week a few weeks back, so we'll bring this in as a special, make good 5 random games from across this weekend. And we'll start off, Kieran, with Netherlands against France in the Euros qualifiers, which is Friday night at 7:45.
Yeah, I've gone 2-0 France. On paper, this is one of the bigger games. I think France, very good squad, a lot of depth in there, good defensively, and obviously the main man Mbappe up top. So I've gone 2-0 France in that one.
Yeah, I've gone tight game, but 2-1 France. Then up next, we'll go to League One, Blackpool against our old pals, Kieran, Stevenage.
Oh, what a place. What a place. We booked to go and see a Stevenage game on the weekend of the passing of the Queen, which meant the game got cancelled. But we still went for our camping weekend in Stevenage, which is probably why, and no other reason whatsoever, I've gone for this result. I've gone 2-1 Stevenage. A theme through these results, I decided to steer clear of like looking at form.
Oh, did
I
you?
just thought I went off initial thoughts really
Went
from
off
the
vibes.
games. So yeah, it's a vibes predictions week, and we'll see how I get on.
Well, I did have a little look at form and league tables and things like that, and both of these teams' last 5 games actually have the same form: 2 wins, 2 losses, and a draw. I've gone 2-1 Stevenage, and I don't like the way this is heading because last week we went for the same results and it ended up 1-1. We had an absolute disaster.
Oh, you're peeking at the notes again.
Next, over to the Women's Super League, Saturday evening, 5:30. We have Chelsea women against West Ham women.
I've gone 3-0 Chelsea in this one.
I've gone 3-1 Chelsea, similar to you. I can just see them sort of steamrolling West Ham, who they lost 2-0 to City in their opening game, then they beat Brighton. Chelsea drawing to 9-player City last weekend. Yeah, we'll go 3-1. Chelsea will sort of jump back onto their form. And then up next, over to League 2, we've got Grimsby and Accrington Stanley.
Again, a game I didn't really look into. My initial thoughts, I thought Grimsby will get the job done, wouldn't they? I've gone 2-0 Grimsby. Simple reason. I thought they'd win when I looked at the fixture.
Thanks, kids. That's some great analytical review there from you.
Some good insight.
I've
League 2 expert over here.
Absolutely. The League 2 ball knowledge is off the charts. I've gone 1-0. As I say, I sort of had a look through. Grimsby are in 18th and Accrington Stanley are in 14th. They're both quite close. They're both on quite a poor run of form. So I think that sort of level out to a draw. Last, we've got the Woodmen. Boreham Wood in the FA Cup 4th qualifying round against Welling United. Welling United in the National League South. Boreham Wood in the National League.
The big Woodmen. I've gone 1-0 Boreham Wood. They're a side that never really concede a lot of goals. Very solid defensive side, but on the other end of things, don't score a whole lot. Obviously, Welling are lower league opposition, but Boreham Wood rarely kind of beat teams heavily from games I've not really been to, but games I've seen or kept an eye on. So Boreham Wood are just known for being quite a solid side that are hard to beat, but similarly not much going forward. So I think they'll scrape it and get through to the first round proper, which I believe is the next one for the FA Cup.
Yeah, I've gone 2-0. Welling are right near the bottom of the National League South. Boreham Wood not far off the bottom of the National League. So I can imagine it'll be an absolute classic at Meadow Park on Saturday afternoon. But yeah, I've gone 2-0 Boreham Wood. And yeah, nice, easy enough result for the Woodmen, I reckon. So we'll have a look back in next weekend at our predictions. Before we move on, let's just do a few little plugs, Kieran. So we've just set up our YouTube, so you can now go and see all the podcast episodes on there. And that is the Side Netting Podcast, or if you do youtube.com/@sidenettingpod. Or you can find us on any of your podcast platforms, your Spotify's, your Google Plays, your Amazons. You get the RSS feed and put it on any of your podcast apps, all of them. And you can also find us on Twitter @SideNettingPod. So up next, we've got a 5-a-side special. So up next, we have our 5-a-side special. So it being an international break, we thought we'd go nice and deep into a couple of 5-a-side topics. So we have our top 5 players of all time and our bottom 5. So this isn't necessarily who we think are the best 5 players of all time, but who myself and Kieran are our personal favourites. So we had a limit there, Kiers, of a max of 2 Arsenal players. Yeah. So did that really affect your picking?
I mean, I think it did, because when you think back to favourite players, there's obviously always going to be a tint of bias in terms of good memories around certain players that relate to your club. So I did have to think a bit outside the box for some, but I think a lot of it was prime Barclays nostalgia. So when I was growing up and more recent years, the players that I just enjoyed watching, and so I'll go into that a bit more. But yeah, I was having a nice little trip down memory lane with some of the thinking around these players.
Yeah, with these kind of ones, especially with your top five as well, the nostalgia does really get into it, because that's when your bests are really formed. You think of your best films and a lot of your best TV shows and all those kind of things really are cultivated when you're growing up. So it really does stick to that.
Yes, the memories attached to the players as well as the players themselves.
Yeah, and then across your top five and your bottom five, kids, do you have any controversial picks? Any you think people are going to give you the old bombastic side eye?
Criminal offensive. I think there's potential. There's one in my worst who, weirdly, I don't really hate that much, but it's more how often they were haunting my team. So I had to put them in. But in fairness, especially this is a bit of a giveaway, but now they've left that team, definitely less hatred towards that player. But I'll get into that. What about yourself?
There's one in my top five that controversial in the team based thing, I think, and then there's one in my bottom five that I think I could be on the receiving end of a lot of death threats and hate for. So we're looking.
Well, fingers crossed. We've plugged the socials, so make sure you answer all the DMs and direct all your abuse there.
Yeah, of course. Well, if anyone does have any thoughts on our top five or our bottom five, or you just want to send in your own, do leave a comment on the YouTube, leave a comment on our Spotify, or drop us a message at SideNettingPod, and we'll have a look at those. And if anyone has any thoughts and ideas, we can give those a little review on the coming week's pods. But besides all that preamble, Kiers, let's get straight into it. Do you want to hit us first with your top five and your goalkeeper?
Yes, so top five goalkeeper is Manuel Neuer.
Okay.
As a goalkeeper myself, obviously, I have a special kind of love for goalkeepers. The goalkeeper union is at large, and Neuer is a goalkeeper I've watched over the years, admired. He's pretty much revolutionised goalkeeping, really. Obviously, the first real sweeper keeper. Seeing him, even in his Schalke days, playing so high up the pitch. It was unheard of at the time, really. And obviously there's that goal in the Champions League where he comes out for Schalke and heads it. And I think it was the Inter Milan. I can't remember who it was, but just volleyed it straight in. And there was the criticism that comes with that. But to have your kind of beliefs and belief in yourself to carry on playing with that style of play that Neuer done through the years is just always a keeper that I've loved to watch. And I think a lot of people that probably don't watch goalkeepers as closely or don't maybe appreciate like what's involved with being a goalkeeper, just watching him, like I'd watch games solely to watch Manuel Neuer because he's actually exciting as a keeper, and before him you don't necessarily think that like a goalkeeper's exciting to watch, but Neuer was the first of his kind, and now you see it all the time with keepers expecting to play high, with defences playing such a high line. It's kind of second nature. Keeper has to play high and sweep for his defence and be good with the ball at his feet. But Neuer was the first of his kind, really, and just a goalie that I love. I love to watch.
He is the revolutionary goalkeeper, isn't he? For sort of the 2010s plus, he is the goalkeeper. He sort of changed the game in so many ways. As you say, you look across at pretty much every other goalkeeper, and they take their lead from Neuer. He is to sort of the 2010s plus what Buffon is to the early 2000s, what Peter Schmeichel is to the 90s. You sort of look at these era-defining goalkeepers, and I can fully understand that as your pick. But in response to Neuer, I can fully understand that. Mine is very much, we're saying before, about nostalgia. And mine is just someone that growing up, every time I watched him play, I would just like, mesmerised probably isn't the word, but I was like fascinated by him. And I don't even know why. He's not even necessarily like a big game-changing or era-defining goalkeeper. He's just someone that I really loved watching. And that's Dida.
Yeah. Vibes. I think he's a big vibes keeper.
Yeah, he's just someone that always watching him for Milan. Like I think of watching the Champions League growing up and him in that Milan kit, the black Milan goalkeeper kit is like etched into my mind. I can just imagine Dida in my mind in that goalkeeper kit growing up, and it just has to be him for me. There was a few people that sort of went by. I don't know if you had any honourable mentions on this one, but Shay Given and Jens Lehmann were two that really were just below Dida for me. I think Lehmann definitely missed out on the old two Arsenals, but Given being Irish, and
Yeah.
that won't be the last time that's discussed in this top five, but Given being Irish really gave him the edge and like a great goalkeeper in the Premier League. But yeah, Dida being my pick, winning the Champions League. I remember him in goal when they lost to Liverpool in Istanbul, and then being in goal when they won 2 years later against Liverpool again. It's just... And obviously in that Brazil team as well.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
on top of that, he was in that Milan team, in that Brazil team with Roberto Carlos, Ronaldinho, Cafu, Ronaldo, and I'm definitely missing other players. Big up Gilberto Silva.
What a player. What a player. Yeah, for me, I was debating on Casillas, Buffon, obviously, but I think Neuer was the first keeper I remember watching growing up, and he made goalkeeping exciting. So for me, there was
That's a
no
great way
other,
to put it.
Yeah, there was no other choice, to be honest, for me.
Yeah, excellent pick. Excellent pick. I think excellent picks from us both, if I do say so myself. And so your player number 2, Kiers. For me, it's a defender, but I don't know if you've got a defender here.
I don't actually.
Okay.
I don't.
Who have you got?
So my pick, I've gone quite attacking with my next picks. Obviously, around nostalgia and players I enjoyed watching growing up. I'll pick my midfield option now. I've gone Mesut Ozil.
Okay. He's on my honourable mentions. He didn't quite make the team.
A player that divided opinion, I think it's fair to say, in a lot of his time at Arsenal, mainly from non-Arsenal fans, the whole narrative around he's lazy, doesn't track back. But talking about players that are just exciting to watch. Like, I'd pay money to go and see Arsenal, and did numerous times just to see Ozil play. Like, he's one of those players that just looks so effortless.
Effortless. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, one player that just looked so effortless on the pitch was Ozil. One of those players that you'd go to games just to watch him. Like, everything he does just seems so natural. He just glide around the pitch, link up the play. Like, watching him live as well, I think you appreciate
100%
even more. And obviously that iconic partnership with Sanchez as well. It's probably a time where we weren't at our best, but we still had those moments. Like, I remember the game where we beat Man United, I think it was 3-0. Game v Liverpool where we pulled it back, we went 3-2 up. I think we ended up drawing 3-3, but Ozil, the infamous Ozil bounce came into play there. But just a player I loved watching in that Arsenal team that at times wasn't the best, but he was a real shining light in that team, and probably was my favourite player in that team. Him and Sanchez, obviously, who Sanchez joining Man United, I think, ruined any chance he had of going in this team. But Ozil was, a joy to watch.
Well, part of that team that won a trophy for Arsenal for the first time in 9 years, they won the FA Cup, and there was that Arsenal team. It had a threat of being really good, and then it just didn't get over the line. You obviously had Szczesny in goal at that period. You had, at a point, one of the best defensive partnerships, but then on their way down again in Koscielny and Mertesacker. But when we signed Ozil, like that day we signed Ozil was an insane day to be an Arsenal. It just felt massive. I think it's the first time I remember us signing like a superstar level player, like coming to us ready-made as an elite level player. I can't remember that happening before that, like actually remembering it. Like, even to be fair, even like growing up, when we signed players, they weren't like ready-made elite level players. Like, because I obviously grew up after we signed Bergkamp, I guess when we signed Henry, he weren't Henry, but after we signed Henry and all those kinds of players, it wasn't until we signed Ozil and then signed Sanchez that we started signing ready-made elite players.
Yeah, I remember the infamous Wenger interview the day before deadline day, and he said, we might have a surprise for you, and the little smile. And then obviously the scenes at the Emirates when we signed him was just unreal.
Yeah, that clip that always now gets played every single day before the end of a transfer window. No matter what the context is. Oh, Arteta smiled. Oh, it's the... No, he didn't. Calm down. Yeah, it'll always get brought in every single time. And it comes from that. It comes from that Ozil signing. It was... I wasn't say revolutionary for us at the time, but it wasn't quite that level. But it felt, as I say, it felt massive. It definitely led to winning that FA Cup. It was that him and Sanchez were huge parts of the FA Cup. And yeah, massive. Against him, I have got a defender in first. I've got a good friend of mine in yours. I've got Vincent Kompany. We said about Neuer being era-defining for goalkeepers. I feel like Kompany was era-defining for defenders in that sort of 2010s period. Just unbelievable. Every time you played City, like, he'd be one of your worries because he was just all-consuming as a defender. Like, big centre-back, destroying sort of everyone in and around him at such a perfect manner. Just an unbelievable defender. Obviously, you can say about the goal against Burnley, don't shoot, Zinny, Vinny, don't shoot. Vinny, no. Just like those level of moments. But as a defender, easily up there in top 5 Premier League defenders.
Yeah.
All time. And you could probably expand that, but I'd comfortably say Premier League all time. Is an unbelievable player and just someone that deserves every single flower in his way. One of the leading reasons why City won the leagues as often as they did. Yeah. It came from the back. It came from Vincent Kompany as their captain. Just an insane player to watch. I don't know what it was about him. It was just the sheer level of confidence that he knew that he was going to get the ball. He knew that a player wasn't going to get by him. He knew that he was going to be first. And when you're watching a player with that level of confidence, it's just an absolute pleasure.
He really was ever present in that City team. Yeah. And as you say, they definitely don't win as many titles as they did without him in the side. Just a rock at the back, and he could twat one in as well from 30 yards, which is always a bonus as well.
Yeah, 100%. I'm liking these teams. I'm liking how they're starting. Let's lead into choice number 3. Kieran, what you got for me?
Yeah, so I've kind of got 3 forwards now.
Okay.
So this might be seen as a bit of probably an obvious choice, and some might say boring.
Sometimes you got to.
It's Lionel Messi. He's such a joy to watch, and I would literally put games on and watch them because he's playing. Like, yeah. I don't care what the game is, even if there's nothing at stake. It's a Barcelona league game. Even now with Inter Miami,
there's a reason that Inter Miami tickets are like £1 million for a ticket.
Yeah, I know. It's just speaking about effortlessness and Ozil, like, Messi's just to a whole different level.
Oh.
I saw a clip of one of the Inter Miami Academy boys, and he was saying, oh, what's something Messi's taught you? And he said just to stop and walk more often, to scan and see the game. And it sounds quite a funny thing to say, but he's probably the one who's done it. Well, he is the player that's done that the best of anyone I've ever seen and probably will ever see, just to take a step back from a game, assess it, and then just pick the ball up and glide through players like they're not there. I think the real moment for me, which is one of the... There's only a few times in football where, like, you actually, like, stand up and just can't believe what you've seen. And the one for me that really stands out was v Bayern Munich in that Champions League, where he spins Boateng and sits him down and chips Neuer.
Unbelievable.
At the time, let's just emphasise, Neuer, who's obviously in my team as well, that there might be a bit of tension between them two when they come out. But to chip the best goalkeeper at the time in the world quite clearly, just to casually chip him and just sit down Boateng, who again was one of the best centre-backs in the world at the time, was just... It's just unfathomable, really, and just he still is a joy to watch. And obviously, coming into the back end of his career, it's going to be weird being in the post-Messi era. Yeah. But even the World Cup just gone, like, watching him play was just a joy to watch. And I think I watched pretty much every game at the World Cup, but I definitely watched every Argentina game purely because I wanted to see Messi. And I think I'm definitely not the only one in a group of people that wanted Argentina to win, definitely after England were knocked out, purely for Messi. And what he's done in the game and just how likeable he is, but more so his footballing ability. And yeah, he's just, I think, the greatest of all time and a joy to watch. So I couldn't have a favourite 5 and not put him in it. As boring a choice as it may be, because he's quite obviously one of the best, if not the best players of all time. So he had to go in for me.
Yeah, I cannot and would not argue with a single second of that. I didn't pick him because of that, because it felt like the obvious choice.
Yeah.
I think, obviously, if it was a top 5, as in who do I think are the best players ever,
Yeah.
he strolls into that. But just every time he touches the ball, I wasn't say touched, but I still think the same now. Every time he touches the ball, you just have the expectation that is usually met that something magic is going to happen. And that only happens with a very select few players, that you're just waiting for them to get the slightest touch on a ball and the whole game will be changed. And as you say, watching him in the World Cup was unreal. Like him in that final, like obviously Mbappe put France on his shoulders, but then in response, Messi had Argentina on his shoulders. He was dragging, he was basically saying, no matter what, I am winning a World Cup. I don't care who you lot are. I am winning a World Cup.
Yeah.
It's happening. And to watch a player do that to that level is something else. But my response to Messi, it was a very close one, actually. This is my first Arsenal pick. It was either going to be another defender, and it was going to be Sol Campbell, or the one I've gone with is midfielder, and it's Patrick Vieira.
Yeah.
Like,
a good choice.
Growing up watching Patrick Vieira, him in that midfield, you say about like players changing games and players being like him and company. Bloody hell, this is a team. This, when you have a player like that who's just so rock solid, and a player as like big and muscular as a Vieira, like Vieira is and was a unit, and yet when he got the ball, to have such a like silky touch and the movement and everything about him in that team was perfection, second to none. Like we say about company being a reason why City won the leagues they did. Without Vieira, Arsenal don't go unbeaten. He is as important to that team as Henry was. He is as important to that team as Sol Campbell was. He's as important to that team as sort of any other player. He may be one of the most important players in that team. I remember when he went to Juventus, and the following season we had them in the Champions League group, and he came back and it was this unreal moment. And just a player that means a lot in terms of, we said about nostalgia, a player that means a lot in terms of growing up watching that Arsenal team. Definitely one of the players. And spoiler alert, Henry's not in my team for a similar reason that Messi's not in my team. But
yeah, surprisingly I've not got Henry in there either, but I did mull it over quite a lot, but he didn't.
Alongside Henry, like players that got me into that Arsenal team, that got me wanting to watch.
Yeah, on Vieira, sadly, he was probably just before my earliest memories of football, but my very earliest memory of watching football was the FA Cup final v Man United, and obviously with his last kick of the ball for Arsenal, he won us the FA Cup in 2005, and that is my earliest memory of football. I remember being in my living room and hiding behind this pink chest of drawers, not being able to look when he took that last penalty. But yeah, what a player.
And the other thing to add as well is that image after we won the league at White Hart Lane, and it's him, it's the Vaseline that's gone through his shirt.
Oh, mate, Vieira with the Vaseline was a scary sight. The Vapor Rub.
Oh, that's the one. Iconic. But yeah, just so much about him. Like, I had to pick someone from that Invincibles team, and he got the nod from me.
Yeah, a very good choice. Hard to argue with that, especially as an Arsenal fan. Sticking to the Arsenal theme, I've got obviously my second Arsenal pick in my kind of forward line, and a player who probably, as you've said, is probably not a player that you'd put in your like top five ability wise greatest ever Arsenal players, but
Yeah.
so loved by Arsenal fans, and I've gone with Eduardo.
Oh, that's a lovely choice. That is a lovely
Yeah.
choice.
Going back to kind of nostalgia and early memories watching football, I remember going down the pub with obviously yourself, Connor, and my granddad, and watching Arsenal play, and he was in that team. I remember kind of watching week in, week out, and he was just such an unbelievable player.
What
Like
kit? What's the kit? When you think of Eduardo in your mind, what's the kit?
It's the long sleeved. I can't. I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but the white ring on the neckline.
Oh yeah.
You know the season we nearly won the league and he broke his leg, which I hate to bring up, but that season where I think he was at the peak of his powers before that leg break. Was it 2008-9?
It was. That's the one.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
But that season. So, yeah, just unbelievable player to watch. Like, the way, his first touch, the way he'd bring a ball down, I think I remember watching, and he just, like, he brings the ball down outside of the boot and just slots it into the bottom corner without really breaking strides. And a player I don't want to bring up because he was obviously ex-Spurs, but he reminds me a bit of Berbatov in a way that he was so effortlessly. I can't even say it word today. He was so effortless with bringing the ball down. Obviously, probably a bit higher energy than Berbatov, but in that vein of just unbelievable technically, and obviously his finishing. Just he was our go-to player that season, and obviously the horrific leg break v Birmingham. And I'll always have a bit of hatred towards Birmingham for that reason, but. That our season fell apart really after
it was such a difference
that moment.
maker.
Yeah, so but Eduardo, a player I remember watching growing up and just loved watching, and was probably my favourite player of that Arsenal team growing up.
Yeah, very much a sentimental pick there.
Yeah.
Like, I think you can group Eduardo in, if you'd have picked Arshavin, I think maybe Chesney had fall into that category as well. Maybe Diaby, players that you really liked for Arsenal, that seemed really nice, and you really willed to do well because they had moments of absolute magic. They weren't banter players because they weren't players that were necessarily bad. They were players that had streaks of really good moments but just could never put them together.
Yeah, I think with Eduardo he's slightly above that category,
Yeah,
because
I
I think
can
he
understand
did
that.
with the likes of your Diaby's, it was like the untapped potential, which obviously with Eduardo with that injury it was, but I think the likes of your Chesneys and stuff for us, that as you say, they're probably more in the likeable but never that good. But Eduardo for that period, that season was
He just never got back to it after that,
unbelievable.
did he, with the
But
leg
yeah,
break?
that killed him. But yeah, a player that was a joy to watch.
Yeah, 100%. Up next is my other Arsenal pick, and I'm really, I'm still stuck now. The players I'm stuck between are very similar in the sense that they are young players that both at different moments pulled Arsenal out of a bit of a funk, that put Arsenal on their back a bit, that were at their core unbelievable, or in one case is and are unbelievable footballers. And it's either Saka or Fabregas.
Yeah, you know what? I very nearly went Fabregas. So nearly, but yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very...
You're going to have to make a big choice.
I think I'm leaning Fabregas, but purely because Saka's still playing. I think that's my choice, but I've been umming and ahhing since I put this team together.
Yeah.
Because there's such clear parallels between the two players. And I'm going to go Fabregas. I'm gonna stick with Fabregas there, and just that's the sort of, like, how have we signed this player? How do Barcelona not want this player? Like, he is in your academy, and you've given him to us. Obviously, at a young age, so he came to us at 16, 15?
Yeah.
And he was unbelievable from day one, from moment one. You're like, how does this player play for Arsenal? And at that point as well, that sort of post-Henry, early Emirates era Arsenal, where it wasn't quite sticking, and we had Fabregas, and he was unbelievable. And just we say before about when players have the ball, and you think, oh my God, something magical is going to happen here, and that was Fabregas.
Yeah,
like,
unbelievable player.
Yeah,
and coming in to replace Vieira pretty much. And there's such big boots to fill at such a young age, and he done it without really looking like it fazed him.
No, he took it on his shoulders, took it in his stride, and he was great when he went to Barcelona as well. Arsenal fans do hate him for going back to Chelsea, but there's a reason he went to Chelsea. Like, Wenger didn't want him. Like, you can't. Yeah. For me, you can't hold that against him. And he's a player that clearly still now has a lot of affection for Arsenal, and I can always appreciate that. And he is and was and always will be an unbelievable footballer. I think you can sort of, in terms of what I think of the players, I think you can see a link with all my players. They're just players that, when you watch them, you just think of nothing else but that one player in that team. Yeah. In that, like, game-changing, and game-changing in the sense of the game rather than the wider game. Like, game-changing roles and game-changing players. And when they have the ball, when they're on the pitch, you feel safe. You feel like it's all right. We could be one down. We could be 10 men, whatever. We have Fabregas on the pitch, and he'll do something. And more often than not, he did.
Yeah, the big memory for me with Fabregas was that Champions League game, the AC Milan, I think, with the white away kit. We won 1-0, and it was him that scored that late goal that put us through. But a travesty, really, that he never... I think he might have been with us when we won that 2005 FA Cup. Obviously not a key part of the squad, but he never won anything with us. And because of how good he was, that's a real shame. He definitely deserved to, because, as you say, unbelievable player.
Yeah, well, he won enough at later clubs to make up for that. Sadly. So we're now rolling in, Kears, to our final choices for the top 5 aside. Who's your final choice?
Yeah, and this one potentially a slightly more rogue pick based on the fact that in their later career they were kind of bantered a bit and didn't reach the heights they had previously, but purely based on their Liverpool days. I've gone Fernando Torres. And again, it goes back to the kind of nostalgia of watching the Premier League, like going around the pub, watching the games with you and my granddad, and early memories of football. And Torres in that Liverpool team used to terrorise defenders. I remember every time they played Man United, I remember the amount of games I watched, Liverpool v Man United. And obviously, back in the day, that was the big game. And Vidic is respected as top 5 Prem centre-backs of all time, probably. And Torres used to just have his way. And the amount of centre-backs he embarrassed. But just the excitement of watching Torres. I used to just love watching that Liverpool team with him up top, obviously Gerrard in behind him. But he was just unreal for those few seasons. Like, the explosiveness, he'd finish, he had all kinds of finishes in his locker, volleys, headers, getting in behind, the pace to get away from defenders, the bit of skill to beat a man. Like, just thinking back to, like, those early Premier League days, me growing up watching the Premier League and kind of falling in love with football, Torres was up there with one of those players that I just loved watching, and it was quite painful because obviously being at one of our biggest rivals at the time, and I know it didn't really work out for him at Chelsea, obviously, but that time he was at Liverpool and, like, growing up watching football, he was just one of those players you'd want to watch. And yeah, just unbelievable player at that time, and obviously well aware it didn't really work out the way he wanted in terms of, like, being an all-timer in terms of careers. But favourite players to watch over that period, for me, he's gone in my team.
Yeah, I can understand that. That period, sort of late 2000s until he went to Chelsea, one of the best in the country by far. Like, a player that would strike fear. Whenever you played Liverpool, it's like, fuck, they've got Torres.
Yeah.
Like, what can he do to us? Like, he could carve up a team. He could run in behind. A brilliant player. part of the Spain team that won the World Cup as well, wasn't he, Torres?
He was, yeah. It was 2010. And he's built like a shit brick house now as well. Big El Nino. I think he manages Atletico Madrid youth team or something, like the under-19s or something.
You're spot on. I just opened his Wikipedia up to check where the years he was at Liverpool for. And yeah, he coaches the under-19s for Atletico. You're spot on. But yeah, those 4 years he was at Liverpool, just carving teams apart, and you thought, all Chelsea are getting a really good player, and it just didn't. Obviously, he scored in that Champions League semi-final, and for Chelsea fans, it doesn't matter.
Unbelievable. Gary Neville creaming himself.
Yeah, for Chelsea fans, it doesn't matter what else he did in that period. He was at Chelsea for 4 years. Bloody hell. One of those years was on loan, but it was Chelsea for 4 years. And yeah, it doesn't matter what else he did. He got that goal, but in terms of consistency, it just didn't happen for him at Chelsea. But at Liverpool, he was top class.
Yeah.
Yeah. My final choice is the choice I sort of tipped up earlier on when I was saying it might be a bit controversial. I tipped it up again when we were talking about Shay Given, and I said we'll come back to the Irish. My final choice is Robbie Keane.
Robbie Keane, I knew it. And you know what? I debated him as well, but I just couldn't bring myself to it as an ex-Spurs man. But yeah,
he was one of those players, and like not just did he have the goals, it was the celebration.
The celebration.
Like, growing up is one of the. I say growing up, it sometimes will still happen now when you're messing about and you do a roly poly and then the guns come out. It's got to be like.
I don't know if we're mobile enough for that nowadays, but we'd give it a good go. Might put a hip out.
Get stuck mid-rolly, but it was the celebration. It was the fact that he was Irish. Let's say he may have been a Spurs man, but he was Irish, so it was okay.
Yeah.
He was saved by everything else.
Yeah.
Because of his Irish credentials. But just watching him growing up and like. The goals he scored against us were infuriating. But it was just an unbelievable striker. He's exactly what you want in a striker. He is, if I was describing a classic little striker, I'd build your Robbie Keane. And even though he played for Spurs, like he scored 80 goals for Spurs, and he was top tier. He was a class player. And then he left Spurs and it didn't quite happen. He obviously went to Liverpool, went back to Spurs, was at Celtic, and it didn't quite click for him. And then he went to America and sort of never seen from again. Poochie died on the way to his home planet kind of situation. But in his prime era, when he was playing for Tottenham, one of the best in the league at just scoring goals.
Yeah, hard choice to argue with. I as I said, I did nearly go for him as well. I just couldn't bring myself to it, but great striker.
When I was thinking, he was actually one of the first names on my team sheet when I was thinking of my players. It just, like, growing up, he was one of the... When I scored a goal, it wasn't quite Scream Robbie Keane, but in my head it was like, Keane for Ireland.
You were doing the Robbie Keane.
Keane for Ireland, Keane for Ireland, Keane for Ireland.
In reality, you're just waving your hands about a bit and falling on your arse.
In my head, I was prime in my fitness, doing a big old roly-poly. In actual fact, I was on a stretcher getting wheeled off. But
quite impressive that post-30, he's still doing that celebration.
You know what?
I'm just touching 25, and I'm fairly certain I couldn't do that.
I'm backing myself. I could do a Robbie Keane.
Next time I see you were getting that Robbie Keane.
Well, to be fair, I'm seeing you this coming weekend, and I know drinks are involved. So,
you'll be getting the Robbie Keane out immediately.
Oh, the streets of B Word, be prepared for the rolling thunder.
High alert. Rolling putt. Oh, God.
So we have to narrow these 5 down to a team, Ickes. So goalkeeper, nice and straightforward. It's Dida against Neuer.
I'm backing Neuer. I'm backing Neuer to the 10th degree. He revolutionised. I do like Dida as well, and I completely understand your point, the iconic hit, the moments he had in that team. But Neuer revolutionised goalkeeping and made goalkeeping exciting, made goalkeepers exciting to watch. Just he's probably the one player in this team I will go to bat for because above all others, because he was
Goalkeeper
just
union coming in
goalkeeper
absolutely
union.
clutch.
Manuel Neuer, just yeah,
Yeah, I
he
think for the reasons you say, I'm very happy to secede to Neuer there. Like, as much as I love Dida, and for me personally, he's one of the top goalkeepers of all time. In quality, Neuer is up there from, like, you literally go all time. You go all the way back to your Gordon Banks of the world, and you put in Neuer in and against him. I think, Neuer's got to win that goalkeeper battle, unfortunately. I am sorry, Dida, but you're always number one in my heart. Okay, next up, we've got Company and Ozil. I think we need a defender in this team.
yeah.
So
I think,
you can decide if you want to keep Ozil and bin off another one of your players. I'm fine with that, but we've got to have a defender in this team.
yeah. Just trying to think who. You know what? I might put Eduardo forward for a sacrifice on this one. I did love him, but as you say, probably not the heights of some. It's more that nostalgia thing. But Company, I know it's a favourite 5, but yeah, in terms of non-Arsenal players, you watched him,
Yeah.
and he just embodied what it is to be a defender, and he had that modern element of being quick, being strong, and being able to play as well. So yeah, I'm happy to go with Company on this one. So yeah, Company, happy with that.
Cool. So Company's in the team. So up next, we'll go then Vieira against Ozil.
Yeah, tough one. Two very different players. As I said, for me, Vieira was probably a year or two before I really remember watching football on the regular. Obviously, I've seen plenty of clips of Vieira. I know
Can't
what he's done
describe
for the
how
club.
good he was. He's
Yeah.
one of those players that you see clips and you think, oh, he's great. You watch him in a game.
Yeah.
If you went back and watched the full 90 of Arsenal, especially in that Invincible season, I think you'd get it very quickly.
Yeah. The thing is, for me, going off like favourite players, for me, Ozil's one of the players I think like a joy to watch football. Like he made me enjoy watching an Arsenal team that at times were definitely not a joy to watch. We've spoken previous pods about some of the heavy beatings we've had over the years, but there was moments of relief, and obviously that good win against Chelsea, I think 3-0. I think United as well. We won 3-0 at home as well, and Ozil was integral to that. But I'll be, I will. It's hard to go against someone like Vieira, but in terms for me growing up watching football, Ozil was one of my favourite players, definitely from an Arsenal point of view to watch. But I won't be too upset if we go Vieira because obviously it's hard to go against that.
Yeah,
man.
I think for what, like, outside of how much I love him as a player, for what he accomplished,
Yeah,
like,
I think we've got to have an Invincible in
you have to have an
team,
Invincible in
really,
this
don't
team.
we? So
100%.
on that basis, honourable mention to Ozil, but
Yeah.
I'm happy to go Vieira.
Yeah, this is easily our most difficult team selection we've had in these. Like,
It's the nostalgia attached to some of these players. You just think in the good memories, the good times.
yeah,
But
like,
yeah.
as I said before, Vieira, one of the first players I loved, so he had to get in there. Up next is Fabregas and Messi. Unfortunately, I think this is a no contest.
Yeah, Messi.
The second you put Messi
if
in
you're a
that
football
team,
fan, you like watching Messi play football. It's as simple as that, really,
Yeah.
isn't it?
it's got to be done. Well,
Yeah.
the final one, two of Liverpool's greats, Robbie Keane and Fernando Torres. Kears, you're an Irish man.
I was just about to say, if we don't have an Irishman in this team, we could get disowned by our fathers. So, on that basis, I'm going Torres. No, I'm joking. Yeah,
This is how you announce that you're disowning the family.
the Burke name is with me no longer.
gone.
But I think Keane. I nearly picked him myself. Was great to watch. Watching Ireland games as well.
Yeah.
Was probably one of the only, if not the only, shining lights in an Ireland team that pretty much never qualified for any tournaments. So yeah, I think Keane, the celebration alone and the prospect of seeing that celebration on Friday night is reason enough for me to put Robbie Keane in this team. I think
We might have to do a little video for the pod as well.
yeah, you see that see that frightening sight on the socials in the next week or so.
Living my absolute Robbie Keane best.
How many?
So
pints
next week,
this
episode's coming from Barnet General.
Yes. How many pints deep before Robbie Keane comes out? It's got to be 6+, surely.
Oh, we'll be going back and forth all over the gaff. So that is an excellent team. I think we've come up with here. In goal, we've got Manuel Neuer. In defence, we have Vincent Kompany. In midfield, we have Patrick Vieira. And up top, we have the unbelievably elite duo of Lionel Messi and Robbie Keane.
Some team. And I'll tell you what, when we come to pair our five-a-side teams up later in the season, this team's going to take some beating.
Imagine Messi in the cages.
Oh, mate. The thing is, you try and snap him, but you just couldn't get near him. Even in a five-a-side pitch, you just wouldn't get near him.
Yeah. That's definitely one of our best teams. So we've now run out of time to do our bottom 5, so we'll roll that over next week and we'll go into our bottom 5 players of all time, which could be a very interesting conversation. But for this week, Kiers, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone else for listening. We'll be back next Thursday. Have a good one. Goodbye.